If you were asked to name the 4 greatest Survivor players of all time, or at the very least, the 4 players who you believe best represent the show, who would you choose? Who would be on your personal Mount Rushmore of Survivor? Maybe Rob, or Russell, or Suri, or Parvati. It's not at all an easy question to answer, as Survivor has had dozens of players who you could make a very strong case for being in this esteemed list. Today, I'm going to share who I would choose and give my reasons as to why. But first, let's go over some background. For my non-American viewers, Mount Rushmore refers to one of our national monuments. Located in South Dakota, Mount Rushmore is a sculpture that was carved into the side of a mountain by sculptor Gutzon Borglum. The piece depicts 4 of the US's most recognizable and influential presidents: George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Theodore Roosevelt, and Abraham Lincoln. Beginning construction in 1927 and being completed in 1941, Borglum's magnum opus has since become one of the most notable American landmarks and a fixture of American culture. Since then, Mount Rushmore, or sometimes the Big Four, has been used to indicate the best or at least most notable figures in a given category. In music, the Big Four is usually used to indicate the best or most influential bands in a given genre. For example, Metallica, Megadeth, Slayer, and Anthrax are referred to as the Big Four of thrash metal. In 2009, ESPN conducted a series of polls where fans could vote for the Mount Rushmore of athletes from a given state. There are tons of other examples, but I think you get the idea. So, who would be on the Mount Rushmore of Survivor? Well, let's ask the man himself, Jeff Probst, and see what he thinks.
I'll pick Ben.
Well, that is an interesting choice. Now, I like Ben, more than most actually, but I definitely wouldn't have him in my Mount Rushmore. To be fair, Jeff does also mention Rob, Parvati, and Sandra, which are all solid choices. To me, the players best suited for this honor are 1. Those who have won at least once, with the 2-time winners being easy locks in my opinion, 2. Those who have played multiple times and are incredibly iconic to the series, and 3. Those who have reached Final Tribal more than once, including their winning time or times. So with that in mind, sorry if this sounds like a basic answer, but my choices are, well, the ones from the thumbnail: Rob, Sandra, Tony, and Parvati. Obviously we have Tony and Sandra, the 2-time winners. Then we have Rob and Parvati, who both each won a season and finished second on another. All 4 of them have played at least 3 times each, 4 if you count Australian Survivor. Combined across all appearances, US and Australia, these 4 have played a combined 19 times. All of them are incredibly iconic and are rightly regarded as some of the greatest players of all time. Alright, enough praising these 4. They already get enough of that. They don't need me to back them up. Those picks were a little too easy. Let's give a spotlight to the winners who haven't had the opportunity to return as of yet. Those who could have been held in the same regard as those I've mentioned, if only given the chance. I might be biased with this one since, as I've said before, he was my first winner, but I do believe Chris deserves a ton of credit that he doesn't always get. Chris should not have won Vanuatu. Everything was stacked against him, but despite all of that, he was still able to pull it off. The way he was able to navigate the post-merge is nothing short of revelatory. Plus, his final tribal performance was absolutely perfect for his jury, telling them exactly what they wanted to hear. It's only rivaled by one other, which we'll talk about soon. Earl was 1 stray vote away from the first perfect game, and it's no secret why. Despite initially being on the Have-Nots tribe, he was able to navigate the game so effortlessly, it's honestly insane. That, and he was the first unanimous winner, of which there's only been 5 in the show's history, so that deserves praise as well. Todd's Final Tribal performance is legendary. Most winners have the game won before Final Tribal, and the ceremony itself is more of a formality, but Todd is one of the defining examples of being able to snatch it up right at the end. Proof that you should always try your hardest even if the odds are against you, and to never count your chickens before they hatch. Also, him and Amanda being able to blindside James with 2 idols in his pocket is just perfect. Finally, we have the one new era winner who I think will go down in the history books as one of the strongest one-time players, assuming she doesn't come back. That's right, it's Dee. The closest we've ever come to getting Kim Spradlin 2.0, Dee was a triple threat that exceeded all expectations. It's probably too early to say this definitively, but I will be very surprised if we get another winner more dominant than Dee in this period of the show. Now, let's have a bit of fun with this idea, and try to name the Mount Rushmore of other aspects of Survivor. Since we already talked about the winners, let's jump to the best 4 to never win. It should go without saying that there is a wide net of players I could choose from, and no matter what, there will be those who disagree. But what can you do? Like with the winners, I'm going to start with those who have played more than once and have a tangible legacy. For this group, I feel like the biggest lock is Suri. I assume no one will have an issue with that, right? Okay, easy choice out of the way, let's continue. For the remaining heads, I'm going to start with Rob Cesternino, the man who made flip-flopping a viable strategy, and of course is perhaps even more well known for his podcast, which has been active for nearly 15 years. Russell Hantz, love him or hate him, he changed the game, finding idols without clues, intentionally sabotaging his tribe, and forming day one alliances with everyone, all groundbreaking at the time. Granted, not all of these worked, but few players ever leave as big a mark on the game as Russell did, so he deserves his due for that. This last spot was really tough, and my choice might be unexpected to some of you, as she's never been the biggest personality, but her games speak for themselves. That's right, last in this group is the Amanda Kimmel. Alongside Russell, Amanda is the only person to play and make Final Tribal on back-to-back seasons. Yes, she always falters with the jury, but getting there twice, especially in a row, is something that should be respected. Let's be a little fair to those who haven't gotten the opportunity to return and list the big four one-timers who did not win. The so close, yet so fars. Those who would have won if things turned out just a little differently. And unfortunately, no, Rome will not be included, much to his chagrin. Dom literally came as close to winning as you can get without actually winning. If just one thing had gone differently, it could have easily been him over Wendell. The very next season gave us someone who, in hindsight, probably should have won, Mike White. Living up to his Goliath designation, Mike was in a strong position the entire time, only receiving one vote against the whole season, from Allison at her boot. There's a popular theory that Mike threw Final Tribal so that Nick, a David, would win, thereby paying off the season's theme and likewise giving the perceived most deserving the prize. And while he's never officially commented on the matter, I personally buy it. But disregarding that, Mike is still an excellent player, and worthy of this spot. Plus, he convinced Jeff to not have Redemption Island return in San Juan del Sur. So, we should be thanking him. Wow, 3 seasons in a row. Yep, next up is the Kool-Aid Man himself, Rick Devens. Oh yeah! I know Devens has a lot of detractors, but he deserves an immense amount of credit for his sheer threat level. I mean, just look at the jury's reactions to his idol plays. That's irrefutable right there. He was such a big threat that it was pretty much a given that whoever took him out would assuredly win. And yeah, finally we have arguably the best non-winning player of the new era, Jesse. His blindside on Cody is unquestionably my favorite moment of the post-Winners at War seasons. Everything about this moment is pitch perfect. From the actual vote itself, to getting Carla to waste her idol, to that handshake. Oh, it gives me goosebumps every time. Even without that, Jesse showed himself as an exceptional player throughout. Someone who would have crushed anyone against the jury if only he could have gotten there. Alright, we spent enough time talking about the best players of all time. Let's talk about the opposite end of the spectrum. The early birds, the speedrunners, the gone too soons, the cut down in their primes. Yeah, we're doing first boots. Biggest lock on the board is easily Francesca. I mean, do I need to explain why? Recency bias be damned, Jelinski is what all first boots should strive to be. He became more iconic in one episode than most players do in an entire season. Several will mean 7 until the end of time because of this man. It seems only right that he be immortalized up here.
This is where great survivors are made. This is where the legends are made. Jelinski is a legend.
Next up, ya know her, ya love her, the original Edge of Extinction resident, Reem Daly. Not only was she just a genuinely great character and would have already been a strong contender for this list if she only got to appear in one episode, but the fact that she got to appear on screen the entire season due to the Edge gives her a huge boost in this assessment. For this last spot, I could have picked between a dozen people, but all I need is one word to convince you of this person's worthiness. Damn! Alright, let's move from individual players to some of the most iconic groups of players. Let's start with the Mount Rushmore of dynamic duos. Those legendary pairs who took control of the game and proved that you can't win Survivor alone. This was a really tough one to do, as there are so many to choose from. But for now, I'm going with Rob and Amber, Malcolm and Denise, Dom and Wendell, and Tony and Sarah, aka Cops R Us. Sorry JT and Steven, you just barely missed the cut. Rob and Amber are the greatest reality TV couple in history, and I don't think it's close. They completely ran All Stars the whole way through, got engaged at the finale, and even had their wedding broadcast live on CBS's dime. The fact that Survivor has been more successful in producing genuine, long-lasting romances than The Bachelor and The Bachelorette is just hilarious to me. Malcolm and Denise survived the train wreck that was Matt Sane and managed to play the middle flawlessly in the post-merge. Just goes to show that challenges aren't everything. Dom and Wendell, they literally tied at the end. A truly unprecedented event, and one that made the entire story of the season make sense in hindsight. If the show had decided to just let the two of them be joint winners, I don't think anyone would have complained. Finally, Cops R Us is a special one, because it was the culmination of 3 seasons worth of relationship building for Tony and Sarah. Their fire-making showdown in Winners at War is one of the most emotionally gripping moments in the show's history. If you didn't get choked up by Tony apologizing to Sarah after beating her, then I don't think you're human. Now, let's expand from duos to entire alliances. These groups of players completely ran their seasons and had a profound impact on the series at large. To me, you can't have this list without the OG alliance, the Toggy Four. They were the original. Who knows where Survivor would be if not for them? Maybe voting alphabetically would have become the dominant strategy. To prove that alliances can be dysfunctional and effective, next up is Kasaya, easily the most entertaining of this group. Need I say more? The Black Widow Brigade arguably left the biggest imprint on the game of any alliance in history. It was this group's success that made it almost impossible for women's alliances to exist. As soon as they're suggested, they're almost immediately shut down. Teeny tried to set up a women's alliance like 3 separate times in Survivor 47, and it fell through every single time. Those first 3 were easy, but the last one I thought about for a long time. Like D, it might be too early to say for sure, but when I think of iconic alliances in recent memory, the Tika 3 from Survivor 44 is always top of mind. It's always impressive to see an underdog tribe come back and take over the season, and the Tika 3 proved that you should never give up, even if you have a numbers disadvantage. So, we've done individual players, duos, alliances, and now it's time for entire tribes. These were the most entertaining, notable, and iconic tribes that electrified us in every scene. I'll be limiting this section to majority newbie tribes, just to be fair. For the first, let's start with the second season, Australia. I know. Half of this cast have pretty much been cancelled at this point, but judging purely on a television viewing experience, Kucha and Ogakor are 2 of the most balanced tribes entertainment-wise in the entire series. There's a reason why this season was so popular, and why so many of the players returned. Yes, most of them had diminishing returns, and that's being charitable, but this cast left such a big mark on pop culture that I couldn't ignore them. That being said, you could realistically put either tribe here, but just due to them being less problematic nowadays, I'll go ahead and pick Ogakor for the first slot. You know them, you love them. Do I really need to explain why Kasaya belongs here? I know I already included them in the alliances section, but they really deserve to be here as well. This group of misfits had no business being as successful as they were, but I don't think anyone complained, as pretty much every scene with them is gold. Just a few seasons later, we got another all-time great tribe, Fei Long from Survivor China. Having Todd and Courtney on the same tribe led to many hilarious bashings of other players. James was a super likable guy, at least in his first 2 seasons. Amanda is just an all-around great player, as I've already said in this video. This is just one of those rare tribes without a single dud. Everyone gets their moment to shine, which is always nice to see. Finally, the most recent tribe in this group left a big impression from the beginning. Manu from Edge of Extinction. This tribe contains all the best elements from the previous 3 I mentioned. They were an absolute train wreck, but in the best way possible. Everything that could have gone wrong for them did, and it was glorious. This is another tribe where everyone gets their moment in the sun. You may disagree, but I believe this tribe is one for the history books. Remember when Survivor used to go to a new exciting location each season? Yeah, that was great. Anyway, next is the best locations that Survivor has been to. Though, as a lowly American, I'm not very worldly. I need a more international voice for this one. Take it away, Bandit.
I don't know about you, but if you're an outsider of America like me, the idea of Mount Rushmore seems like a fever dream. After all, because Northern Ireland is so primitive, you're considered a wee bit of an icon if you can balance 3 pebbles on top of each other. But because I am the International Survivor YouTuber, it feels only fair to talk about the award for the best Survivor location. Survivor has had lots of amazing, unique locations like Fiji, Roach, help me here. I jest, but I think it goes without saying it will certainly not be Fiji. My favourite Survivor seasons are the ones where they incorporate a lot of culture into Survivor seasons to accentuate their location. Survivor China used the Chinese location and its traditions to great effect, with production even being inspired by some of said traditions to make some of the most unique challenges in almost 25 years of Survivor. I also consider Guatemala, as it is honestly really cool seeing a lush jungle being a terrain instead of sandy beaches, with even the Mayan temples being used as the first reward plus tribal council area. However, my final decision, the winner of this award, will be the Pearl Islands. The premiere itself is extremely iconic and surreal, as we see the contestants bartering in a local village to get supplies. It's a fantastic way to gain extra supplies in the marooning phase that isn't fully dedicated to just being a better tribe physically. We had lots of fantastic character moments with the contestants interacting with the Panamanian locals. Plus, the entire season really capitalised on the pirate theme by naming the tribes Drake and Morgan. Every challenge was pirate themed, and I hate to self-promote, but in my video ranking the best individual immunities, the sword and scabbard themed necklace got top spot. It's so cool. Add in the Pearl Islands environment being challenging enough that it wasn't a walk in the park for the contestants, but not causing multiple medevacs, and we end up with a lot of fascinating survival scenes, particularly centered around Rupert. But thanks for having me on your channel, mate. Peace!
Thanks, Bandit. Yeah, I completely agree. China, Guatemala, and Pearl Islands are perhaps the three best examples of strong cultural theming across the entire series. My biggest disappointment with being stuck in Fiji is that they don't really embrace the local culture as much as they had with prior locations. But that's beside the point. For the fourth slot, I'll go ahead and toss in another favorite of mine, Gabon, Africa. This season, and the one that followed, really showcased how beautiful the show can look, and justified the move to HD. Gabon is one of the all-time best challenge seasons in my opinion, and the location plays a large part in that. These large hills led the way for incredible challenges that we probably won't ever see again, like cliff bowling. I could go on, but I absolutely love Gabon and believe it to be in the upper echelon of Survivor locations. What's Survivor without its challenges? I know there's a not insignificant amount of fans who simply do not care for them, and that's fine, but to many more, they are always the highlight of the episode. Survivor has had hundreds of incredible challenges over the years, but these are the ones that always stick out to me. Also, I'm judging them based on the actual challenge design itself, rather than a particular challenge scene, if that makes sense. First off is one of the most complex challenges that the show does, known as Out on a Limb, or the challenge that involves contestants grabbing puzzle pieces across numerous different obstacles. The creativity is on full display here, and it's always thrilling to watch. Understandably, Survivor has shied away from challenges that require direct physical contact as of late, but the king of these in my opinion is Sumo at Sea. This challenge is always a treat every time we see it, and though it may never come back, it will live on in our hearts. Next up we have what used to be the finale kickoff challenge, The Maze. Structurally, these are arguably the most impressive challenges, such as the amazing vertical one in Vanuatu. The designs are incredible, and the scenes themselves are always a blast.
Jeff Probst! What? I think I'm done, bro!
Finally, perhaps the most iconic endurance challenge of all time, Hands on a Hard Idol. No other challenge captures raw strength of will like this one does. It's so simple. Whoever wants it the most gets it. If Survivor were ever to call it quits for good, this should be the final challenge. It would be the perfect send-off for the show. This video is already getting long enough, so I'll conclude with one last category, the best newbie seasons. I was going to do just overall seasons, but my bias towards all-star seasons would have shown, and it would have been super boring and predictable. So, which seasons left the biggest impact without needing characters you already know to sell it? As Bandit said before, Pearl Islands immediately struck a chord with all of us, especially since it capitalized perfectly upon Pirates of the Caribbean fever, which was still prevalent at the time. China is extremely notable for the fact that Survivor was seemingly the first American TV show to be granted permission to film. The challenges all perfectly tied into the culture, and the glimpses into the Buddhist temples and the Great Wall were incredible. Aside from the theme, the cast was also phenomenal. Todd, Courtney, Amanda, James, PG, Eric, okay, maybe not Eric, China also kicked off the golden age of the show, following a string of seasons after All-Stars that received generally lukewarm reception at the time, so it gets points for that as well. Kage-an, the season that launched a million new fans all on its own. If you somehow didn't know, Kage-an and Heroes vs. Villains were the first seasons to be included on Netflix. Though this season was always a very popular one since it first aired, it can't be understated just how much its inclusion on Netflix helped boost this season's reputation. I can't think of a better moment to hook new viewers than G.O.A.T dumping the rice and still not getting voted out. Peak first episode. As someone who arrived to this season pretty late, I was curious to see if the hyping up of it was warranted, and though I started off skeptical, by the end of the premiere, I got it. There's a reason why this season is so many people's favorite, and it rightfully deserves its spot here. Finally, we have by far the best season of the Fiji era, David vs. Goliath. This was another one I was ready to write off due to its dumb theme, but like David overcoming the odds to slay Goliath, everything came together to make this season an all-time great. This is one of those seasons where each episode contains a moment more iconic than the last. Jackets, rice negotiations, minority vote splits, grueling endurance challenges. This season has it all. Alright, I think I'm gonna call it there for now. Thanks again to Bandit for his input. Definitely check him out if you want more great Survivor content. Maybe in the future I can revisit this and do even more categories. There's definitely a lot of unexplored potential with this topic, and I'd like to hear what you all think. Let me know whether you agree with the choices and what you would pick and why. See ya.